Well, good morning and happy Easter, everybody. So glad that you are here. Welcome to the 9 a.m. gathering. Yeah, early birds, and you still look fantastic. Man, Easter is so fun. I found a pocket square for Easter. Let's be clear, my wife found me a pocket square for Easter, but we are so thrilled that you are here. And I don't know about you, I love Easter. I love Easter. I love what it means. I love the colors. I love the candy. I love seeing our kids' joy. And it's just incredible. And I think especially this year, being back together inside for the first time in 2 Easters, it is a long time. It's just so great to be able to be here with you, to be here with those of you joining us online. We're just thrilled. So thanks for spending Easter with us on behalf of our team and over 100 servant leaders that are working to make today happen. We are thrilled that you are our guest. And I think for many of us, if we're honest, right, over the last few years that we've faced and kind of walked through together, the fears we've had to grapple with, the loss that so many of us have experienced, whether that was a loss of a loved one or a loss of life as we know it, a loss of a job or a loss of a dream, whether it has been some physical ailment or some financial ailment or just the turmoil that we experience in the world right now. I think for so many of us, especially this year, we desperately need the story of resurrection. Like, we desperately need to believe that there is more in store than just what we see going on around us. I need to know that there's more in store than just what I might feel and wrestle with on the inside when I'm laying in bed at night and thinking about my life. I know that many of you need to know that there is more in store than just what you can see on the outside. And perhaps more than ever before, the Easter story is something that we all need. And maybe that's where you find yourself this morning. I don't know what you kind of carried in, and you might put on your Easter best, and inside you just feel like death. I don't know if you're kind of like not really the God type, and you've wondered either out loud or quietly in your soul, like, is everything going to be okay? Like, does God even care? Like literally, as I watch the news, I'm upset. Like, does God feel anything? Does God care about our world? Does God hear our prayers? Does God care about my family? Does God care about me? And I think for all of us, if we have to be honest about Easter, because we have the privilege of history, it's so easy for Easter to be just a holiday with bright colors. But for the first century followers of Jesus, I don't know if you've ever thought about this, that first Easter, it wasn't a celebration. It was a delayed funeral. And in the first century, there was no expectation of Easter Sunday. It was just continued grief. It was so difficult for them because for those that had spent years walking around with Jesus, believing the things that he had said, doubting the things that he had said because they sounded just too good to be true, hoping maybe beyond hope that he was who he said he was, and then watching him be killed in this unholy union between temple and empire. When Jesus died, everything changed. When Jesus was killed, there were no more Christians. There were no more followers. All right, there was a brokenhearted mother, some distraught friends, a handful of Galilean fishermen who were hiding out for their lives and disappointed they had wasted the last season of their life following this Nazarene carpenter. I mean, how could they be so gullible to believe that he was actually the Son of God? I mean, how crazy that must have felt for them. I mean, how could they have believed that he was the Messiah that they had actually been waiting for, that their ancestors and generations have been waiting for, the one that they were waiting and praying for that would free them from themselves, free them from political oppression, from spiritual performance, from religious duty. I mean, it just felt too good to be true. And yet, a week ago, as they walked into Jerusalem and everyone was singing their leader's praises, it felt like it was a foregone conclusion that now was the time that Jesus was going to change everything. I mean, this was their Easter glow up, and they were here for it, friends. Like, they were ready. And so much can change in just a few days. And my guess is you've had seasons or moments or even weeks this last year like I have, where in just a few days, everything feels different. what was so hopeful and full of excitement, it just becomes devastating. And again, in the unlikely alliance of corrupt temple and heartless empire, their leader, their rabbi, the one that they had begun to put their faith in that he might be the Son of God, was gone. When they buried Jesus, there was no need to keep the Jesus movement alive. I mean, we know that there's not really Queen without Freddie, right? Bon Jovi needs John. There is no NSYNC without Timberlake, as much as they try. And I believe the Destiny's Children had a different destiny without the Queen, right? Let's be honest, right? And so the same was true for them. They did what all of us would have done, and they hit the unfollow button. And they went back to their old life. And I don't know if you've ever thought about this, but Easter, that first century, there were no pastels, there was no ham waiting, there was certainly no Easter egg hunt. It was just another day of defeat, a morning of mourning. They didn't expect anything special to happen because they had seen the worst possible thing happen to the best person that they knew. The worst thing imaginable had happened to the person that they loved the most. And when they went to the tomb that morning, having been delayed by the religious celebration of Passover, they were expecting what you and I would expect, a dead body. Because when people die, they usually stay dead. And yet for some reason, we're here, thousands of years later, thousands of miles away, celebrating what we believe happened that morning that literally changed everything. There was no reason for them to celebrate. They were not prepared for a party, but when they showed up and the stone was rolled away and they recognized that something extraordinary had happened, that a buried body had yet begun to breathe again, it changed everything for them and has changed everything for millions and millions of people throughout the centuries. Because after resurrection, everything changed. Everything changed after the resurrection because the reality of resurrection changes everything. I mean, there is no category for resurrection, right? There's no religious packaging you can fit this in, and there's no way that this can actually make sense. And yet, here we are. And in fact, Peter, one of the closest followers of Jesus, who actually walked around the planet with him for 3 years, who left everything, who was so excited to be the number one guy behind Jesus, was threatened and abandoned his leader, who said, I would do anything for you, with boisterous faith. And yet when his moment came, he ran away in fear. And he records for us in his story, right, that Jesus actually did come back to life. And the thing I love about the scriptures is that even 15 years later and 30 years later, when these accounts were written, it would have been so easy for them to make themselves the hero and be like, yeah, they all left, but I really, I still believed. I mean, everybody else was kind of a wimp, but let's be honest, I trusted. I mean, wouldn't you do that? I would do that. And yet for all of the followers of Jesus, they don't write a story to believe. They don't write a Bible story for us to memorize. They write what they experienced. They write it, how it happened. And so Peter, who had given up on the story of Jesus in the moment when Jesus needed him most, finds himself forgiven and restored by the leader he denied, and he spends the rest of his life traveling around the Mediterranean, telling people about this Jesus story. And in 30 years, he finds himself in Rome, in Nero's Rome, not on a luxury spring break vacation, but in a prison cell, chained to a guard. And maybe for the last time, his apprentice, John Mark, shows up and through the wall hears Peter tell this story of Jesus once more. One that he'd probably heard before, but he wasn't sure how much longer he had with his leader. He wasn't sure how much longer he had with his mentor. And so he tells Peter, hey, tell me the story one more time. And when he gets to this part, I can just imagine Mark telling Peter, okay, hey, go slow. I want to write this down. I want to get this right. How did it happen? And he hears the story from Peter one last time, perhaps. Not as the hero, but as the one whose hope died when Jesus died. And this is what we call the Gospel of Mark. And so in Mark chapter 16, he records what Peter tells him, that on Saturday evening, when the Sabbath had ended, Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James, and Salome went out and purchased burial spices so they could anoint Jesus' body. And very early on Sunday morning, just at sunrise, they went to the tomb because they knew if you want something done right, you send in a woman. All right? And from those who went to experience him and to the people that tell the story so much that now, thousands of years later, we are hearing it, it is because Jesus trusted and empowered women. Okay? And so here's this moment, right? They go there and there's no countdown. They're at the tomb just at sunrise. And on the way, they're being honest. They're asking each other, who's going to roll the stone away from us from the entrance of the tomb? Because it's really big and heavy. I mean, wouldn't you be asking the same thing? In this hurried burial, they're like, oh, we didn't think that one through. And as they arrive, they look up and they see that the stone, again, which was very large, had already been rolled aside. And when they entered the tomb, they saw a young man clothed in a white robe sitting on the right side. And the women were shocked, as you and I would be. And they realize it's an angel, and the angel says, don't be alarmed. You're looking for Jesus of Nazareth, who was crucified. And he isn't here. He's risen from the dead. Look, see where they laid his body. Now go and tell his disciples. And then Peter adds, including Peter, tell the one that didn't deserve to know. Tell the one who felt like their life was just too far gone for God. Tell Peter that Jesus is going ahead of you to Galilee, and you will see him there just as he told you before. See, when they discovered that Jesus was alive, it changed everything. And every person who has recognized this story to be true throughout the centuries since these first century women has recognized that if this story is true, if Jesus really is alive, if resurrection is real, it changes everything. It can't not. From deep within the earth, after 3 days of the story being over, and his followers fleeing, from deep within the earth, the heart of a dead man begins to beat again. The one that breathed the cosmos into being begins to inhale and exhale the oxygen he created. The corpse of the Creator arose and traded the suffocation of death for lungs full of life. He traded the burden of the law for the scandal of grace, the constricting grave clothes of religion that we so love to wear, for a life-giving, personal, open relationship with God. A welcoming, eternal, and restored reality made real through resurrection, that whether you're sinner or saint, single mother, forgotten brother, whether you're an unwanted daughter or without a father, whether you're black, white, Latin, Asian, broken, whole, weak, or strong, if you feel like that you don't belong, Easter screams through eternity to you, saying you are one radically loved by God, that freedom has come, and that Jesus is alive. And that Jesus' resurrection is actually your invitation to restoration. That Jesus' resurrection is your and my invitation to restoration. So what does that mean for you? Like to really receive that, like with all your stress and your education and your struggle, like is this Easter just like any other, or is it possible? Is it possible that today Jesus actually has something special for you? Like maybe you've come to Easter this year like every other year, and you would call yourself a convinced believer. Like you go to church. Is this just another holiday, or is there something Jesus has for you? Maybe you're here and if you're honest, you're a coerced skeptic. You were promised baby animals, and they will be here when we're done, right? Whether you've been faithful, half full, faithless, or maybe you've just thought that Jesus was an add-on twice a year. I don't know where you find yourself this morning, but that morning, the one that we call Easter, people experienced something that changed their reality, that love was real, that hope wasn't lost, and that Jesus had come back to life. Again, there's no category for resurrection because it changes everything. And so the question for us to wrestle with is, if God would choose to go through all of that, is there anything? Is it possible that there could be anything else that we could do that would cause him to change his mind? I mean, that's kind of the bummer of resurrection, isn't it? Like you can't really take it back. It's like, I'm back. Yeah, right? And have you ever wondered, like, if the people that you trusted, the people that were supposed to be on your side, denied, abandoned, and betrayed you, and then you came back from the dead after they killed you, what would your attitude be? I'd be like, I'm back. Watch out, right? I mean, isn't it interesting? Like, we can get lost in this story, but think about it. You know, miracles can be fabricated stories. Magic and illusion can be sleight of hand. Great religious teachers, like, they come and go. They're a dime a dozen, and that's true now, just as it was in the first century, right? But if someone can predict their own death and resurrection and then actually pull it off and says that the reason that he did it wasn't to get back at you, was to get you back. I mean, I'm with him. I'm with him. I mean, Jesus says that he did all of that for you, that he was raised to life so that you can have life, that you can have hope, that you can have purpose, that you can have a fresh start, so that you and I can have forgiveness and a new way to forgive each other. But there's one difficult thing we have to recognize for that to be true, and that is that restoration always requires a response. For restoration to happen, it always requires a response. And that response can take many forms, right? It can happen in a moment, or it can happen over a lifetime of searching, of curiosity, of questions, of wrestling, of doubt, of fear and frustration, right? Like, perhaps you're here this morning and you've already responded. I mean, you've said yes to Jesus. Or maybe you're here and if you're honest, up to this point, you've honestly said no. You've just said, you know what, consciously or subconsciously, I've heard it all before. Maybe you've decided it feels too far-fetched. And yet, for whatever reason, after all that life has thrown at you these last few years, maybe it hits you a little different today. Maybe for the first time, you're reconsidering. Or maybe, just maybe, for some of you, this is actually the first time that you've heard that that's what Easter is really all about. That that's actually the reason that Jesus came back to life, was for you. Not so you could clean your life up, not so you could change religions and put it on your census, right? But to actually have a brand new start. And maybe you're wondering, man, I don't know. Like, I look nice today, but on the inside it's rough. And I would just encourage you. Peter would say the same thing. He would say, yeah, me too. My old life was a mess. And it didn't take long. It took like 2 days. And I was like, I'm out. And it was only when he saw his resurrected rabbi, only then did he fully understand that what Jesus had done for him, that the confusing things that he'd heard Jesus say over the years were really all just an invitation to the kingdom of God that's here now, and that you are invited. And that in the midst of all that we get wrong, Peter would tell you, yeah, what I thought was the worst experience of my life, it was actually the beginning of good news. It looked dark, but it just wasn't over yet. That actually God, in the midst of that pain, was doing something for you because God is for you. One of Jesus' close friends who knew Peter well, who was actually there with Peter when they ran to the tomb after hearing from the women that something miraculous had happened, right before Jesus was killed, recorded a conversation with Jesus and one of their friends after a devastating loss that she had experienced, a circumstance she would have never chosen or predicted, a loss of her brother, a loss of a family member, something that many of us are all too familiar with, that pain this year. And Jesus says this to her, and I believe he says it to you this morning. He says, you don't have to wait till the end. This isn't about something later. This is about something now. He says, I am right now resurrection and life. And the one who believes in me, even though he or she may die, they will live. And everyone who lives believing in me doesn't ultimately die at all. That they're made new, they're restored, they're brought to life just as Jesus would be. He says simply to her, do you believe this? And she responds, "Yes, Master, all along I have believed that you are the Messiah, the Son of God who comes into the world." And she was the one who was there that first Sunday morning. She actually did. And I believe Jesus asks all of us that same question this morning. Not do you have it all figured out yet, not can you explain it in a way that actually makes sense, but simply, do you believe that resurrection changes everything? And will you accept that his resurrection can change everything for you? That in fact, Jesus invites us to let go of the past, as nice or as dark as it might feel, and say yes to him to become fully alive and forever free. That the resurrection of Jesus is good news, and Easter proves once and for all that death doesn't have the final word. That your old life isn't your only life, and that no matter how dark and difficult the day feels, a second chance offer stands. And that you and I no longer have to settle for believing that the way things have always been are the way things always will be. Because you and I can choose to become fully alive and forever free. Because the resurrection changes everything.
The Spirit of the Lord is upon me. I'm anointed to bring hope. The promise fulfilled in a moment. We're still watching it unfold. There's good news for the captive, a proclamation for every soul. This liberty is for the broken, an invitation to be made whole. Listen for the free man singing, he's delivered me. Look out for the woman shouting, his garment made me clean. Listen up for the seasons changing, he's rebuilding everything. Listen for the people shouting, this is Jubilee. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me. I'm anointed to bring hope. The promise fulfilled in a moment. We're still watching it unfold. There's good news for the captive, a proclamation for every soul. This liberty is for the broken, an invitation to be made whole. Listen for the free man singing, he's delivered me. Look out for the woman shouting, his garment made me clean. Listen up for the seasons changing, he's rebuilding everything. Listen for the people shouting, this is Jubilee. This is Jubilee.
There is true joy in his freedom, so open your heart and receive it. There is a hope to believe in. Jesus, Jesus. There is true joy in his freedom, so open your heart and receive it. There is a hope to believe in. Jesus.
And that's actually the invitation that is here for each of you today. That Jesus would say, my resurrection wasn't just for me. It was for you. It was to change everything about your life. And yet there's something so powerful in how simple he made it. That if you simply say yes, I believe that. I don't have my life all figured out. I certainly don't have it all put together. I don't have all my questions answered, but if you would go through that for me, then yes. Yes. And so maybe today, for the first time or coming back to that recognition, that realization that the resurrection is good news, that Easter changes everything for you. Maybe that's where you are this morning. And I just want to give you a moment to simply say yes to Jesus. And so in your own heart, in your own soul, you just pray these simple words with me. Simply say, Jesus, I say yes to you. Jesus, I believe that you changed everything. So will you come be my everything? Jesus, I say yes to you. I believe that you changed everything. So would you come and be my everything? And if that's you this morning, if that was the prayer in your heart, again, for the first time or to come back to God, I just want to invite you, would you grab your cell phone? Because we want to celebrate with you. Would you grab your phone and would you just turn your flashlight on and hold it up so we can celebrate with you? Would you just let us know? Awesome. You just let us know that we can celebrate with you. Fantastic, fantastic. I love it. Here's the incredible thing. Is that the Bible tells us that actually all of heaven celebrates, all of heaven cheers when one of us decides to say yes to Jesus, that's actually what Jubilee means. That we get to celebrate and simply join in the party that's already going on in heaven for you. So I would invite you, let's stand together if you're able and continue singing this song to celebrate that Jesus is alive, that the resurrection changes everything, that we can participate in the Jubilee of heaven together. Let's sing.